February 18th, 2026. A 87-year-old billionaire sits in a deposition room under oath before the United States Congress. He built one of the largest fashion empires in American history. He gave one single man, complete, unlimited power of attorney over every dollar he owned. And today, under penalty of perjury, he says he can't remember. This is the deposition. The whole thing, and what's buried inside it, will make your blood run cold. Before we go any further, you need to understand who Leslie Wexner is, because most people outside of Ohio have never heard his name. And that may not be an accident. Wexner built the Limited in 1963 with $5,000 borrowed from his aunt. From that single store, he eventually opened, by his own account, 10,000 stores across 20 brands worldwide. Victoria's Secret, Express, Abercrombie & Fitch, Bath & Body Works, Lane Bryant. At his peak, he was worth over $10 billion. He was one of the most powerful men in American retail, one of the most powerful men in one of the most powerful men in Ohio. And for years, quietly, one of the most powerful men in Jeffrey Epstein's world, because Les Wexner was Jeffrey Epstein's first major client, his anchor. The source, according to federal prosecutors, of virtually all of Epstein's early wealth. And on February 18th, 2026, Congress finally put him in a chair and asked him to explain himself. What followed was 3 hours of testimony that you need to hear. Let's start at the beginning, because the story of how Les Wexner met Jeffrey Epstein, by his own account, is almost too convenient to believe. Wexner says it was the mid-1980s. He's in Florida for the first time. He's being driven around by a couple, Bob and Wendy Meister, an insurance broker, and his wife. And then, out of nowhere, the car stops. Wexner testified Bob stopped the car and he said, "There's somebody you should meet. Really smart, savvy guy named Jeffrey Epstein." And so they stopped the car. I was sitting in the back seat and they introduced me to Jeffrey and we drove off. That was about it. A chance encounter, a casual introduction in a parking lot. That's the story. But here's what the Vanity Fair reporting suggests. That Epstein had actively sought out this introduction. That he told Bob Meister he had learned that Wexner's current money manager was stealing from him, and he positioned himself as the solution. When Congress asked Wexner about this, he denied it, said he had no recollection of Epstein ever making that claim. And then there's what Bob Meister himself reportedly said, that he warned Wexner repeatedly to stay away from Epstein, that his wife warned him, that at Wexner's own 60th birthday party, they told him, "Stay away from this man." Wexner's response under oath, never. He never said that. And I don't think he was even at the party. Now, this is the part that should stop you cold. In 1991, Leslie Wexner signed over a power of attorney to Jeffrey Epstein. Not a limited power of attorney, not a restricted one. A broad, sweeping, total power of attorney covering every asset Wexner owned. Under oath, Wexner described what that meant. He said he was running 20 businesses simultaneously. He was traveling 300 to 400 hours a year by air. He needed someone to manage the complexity of his personal life, pay the bills, file the taxes, sign the paperwork. And Epstein, a man he met in a parking lot who he claims wasn't even a friend, got total control. Congress pushed him on this. They asked, is it fair to say Mr. Epstein had pretty wide latitude over your financial affairs? Wexner answered, and I'm reading directly from the transcript, yes, that's fair, pretty widely. Completely different stories. One of them is a lie, pretty widely, over hundreds of millions of dollars, with no meaningful oversight, from a man who Wexner insists was never a close friend. Now ask yourself this. Would you give unlimited power of attorney to someone you don't consider a friend? Because what happened next, according to federal prosecutors, is that Epstein used that power to steal. The estimate from Wexner's own attorneys, delivered to the Department of Justice in 2019, several $100 million. Hundreds of millions. Gone. And Wexner says under oath that he didn't notice. Drop a comment right now. Does that explanation make sense to you? Hundreds of millions and no one noticed? Let me know below. Let's talk about the assets, because this is where the testimony gets particularly difficult to follow. The Manhattan Mansion, 9 East 71st Street, one of the most valuable townhomes in New York City. Wexner bought it, renovated it over 3 years, and then sold it to Epstein. The sale price, $20 million. When Congress asked whether that was a fair market value, Wexner said yes. When they pointed out that his own lawyers had told the DOJ the assets were sold at deeply discounted prices as part of Epstein's theft, Wexner said, "I never heard that before." But here's the detail that has investigators paying close attention. The deed to the property did not officially transfer to Epstein until the mid-2000s, more than a decade after the supposed sale. Congress asked, "Is it possible Mr. Epstein sold the house to himself without your knowledge?" Wexner's answer, no. Of course he bought it. Did he approach you to buy that home? Yes. So he knew about the sale, but didn't know about the pricing discrepancy and couldn't recall how the money was actually transferred. $20 million, and he can't explain how it was paid. Then there's the plane. A Boeing 727, the company plane, later replaced with a 737. The company sold one of these aircraft to Jeffrey Epstein. Price, $6 million. Wexner says that was fair market value. His lawyers told DOJ was deeply discounted. Wexner under oath, "I never heard that." And then the property next door, in New Albany, Ohio, Jack Kessler's house, a property adjacent to Wexner's estate that Epstein eventually came to occupy. Congress asked whether Wexner's security staff guarded that property. Wexner said, "I have no knowledge. I would doubt it. Frankly, impossible." But Maria Farmer, one of Epstein's earliest known accusers, says she was brought to a guest house on or adjacent to Wexner's property in 1996. She says she was assaulted there by both Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, and that Wexner's own security staff stood guard. Wexner under oath, "I never met her. Didn't know she was here. Didn't know she was abused." Now, I want to show you something that reveals more about this relationship than almost anything else in the transcript, because Wexner has insisted repeatedly that Epstein was never a close friend, just a business associate, almost like an accountant. So explain this. In 2003, Ghislaine Maxwell, or someone in Epstein's circle, asked associates to write notes for a birthday book celebrating Epstein's 50th birthday. Wexner wrote one. Under oath, when asked what he wrote, Wexner said, and again, this is direct from the transcript, "Happy birthday, your friend Leslie." And he was a bachelor, so I drew a pair of boobs. Congress asked him directly, "You've said several times today that you did not consider Mr. Epstein a friend. However, you signed this letter, your friend Leslie. Why?" Wexner said, "I don't know." And then there's what Epstein called their private conversations. He had a phrase for confidential matters between them. He called it gang stuff. An email recovered from 2006 shows Epstein writing to Wexner's personal assistant, ending with, "I believe that this information belongs to you, and under gang stuff rules, I cannot simply be the repository of people's hush calls and not share with you." The subject line, "For Les's eyes only. Please do not circulate." When Congress asked Wexner about this phrase, he explained it as just how Epstein talked. A Brooklyn expression, like saying something was confidential. But what exactly were they keeping confidential? Because Epstein, in what appears to be a draft letter that may have never been sent, wrote this to Wexner, "You and I had gang stuff for over 15 years. A great deal of it that she," meaning Abigail, Wexner's wife, "was unaware of. I had no intention of divulging any confidence of ours, no matter what accusations she made. And then, I always told you I would never, under any circumstances, give it up or put you in harm's way, no matter who, what, or when." What's W's response under oath to all of this? No, absolutely not. This is cover psychobabble as far as I'm concerned. I want to hear from you. What do you think Epstein meant by that letter? Comment below. Because Congress didn't get a straight answer. We are now in the final stretch of this testimony, and this is where things get darkest. Near the end of the deposition, Congress introduced an FBI PowerPoint presentation, a summary of their Epstein and Maxwell investigation, and directed Wexner to a single slide. It was titled, "Prominent Names." Wexner's name appeared, and beneath it, a single entry from a redacted source that stated that Epstein earned his money from having homosexual sex with Wexner. Congress asked Wexner directly, "Is that accusation correct?" Wexner said, quote, "Absolutely not, or any man ever. I'm very straight, super straight. And look, a denial is a denial. We report what's in the record, but understand what this means." The FBI had received information from at least one source making this specific claim. That information was significant enough to be included in a formal investigative summary. It was never charged, it was never proven. Wexner denied it completely. But it sits there, in the record, under oath. And then one final exchange. A congresswoman confronted Wexner directly. She told him, "Your name comes up in the emails of survivors who never met you. They were told your name. They associated your name with Epstein's world." She told him 2 people connected to him, Epstein and OSU Dr. Richard Strauss, had both been implicated in abuse of women. And she asked him, "Why didn't you press charges? Why didn't you go after him? He used your money to hurt girls." Wexner's answer was long. He talked about his father's advice, about not getting into pissing contests, about following counsel. And then he said something that, for a man who claims he was blindsided, was surprisingly self-aware. "I can't tell you how much I value my own ethics, my own moral compass, that it has a true north. Whether you believe him, that's your call." So, what do we take away from 3 hours of congressional testimony? Here's what's in the record. Not speculation, not rumor, the sworn record. 1. Leslie Wexner gave Jeffrey Epstein total, unlimited power of attorney. Epstein used it to steal, by Wexner's own lawyer's account, several $100 million. Wexner claims he didn't notice. 2. Epstein occupied a Manhattan mansion, originally belonging to Wexner, sold at what his own lawyers called a discounted price. Wexner can't explain how the money transferred. The deed didn't change hands for over a decade. 3. A woman, Maria Farmer, says she was assaulted in a property adjacent to Wexner's estate, guarded by Wexner's own security. Wexner says he has no knowledge. 4. Epstein used Victoria's Secret, Wexner's company, as a cover to approach young women. Wexner says he was told once, confronted Epstein once, and believed Epstein's denial. 5. Epstein held himself out as having an intimate, confidential relationship with Wexner, describing gang stuff that Wexner's own wife was unaware of. Wexner calls it psychobabble. And through all of it, the hundreds of millions, the houses, the plane, the properties, the birthday card with the drawing, the letters, the FBI file, Wexner's answer is the same. He didn't know. He didn't notice. He was busy. Long pause. Music fades to near silence. Maybe that's true. Or maybe, as the survivors who testified before Congress have said again and again, the money always leads somewhere. And the people who provided it always knew more than they've said. If you made it this far, subscribe, hit the bell, because the next video goes deeper into what the FBI files show about Epstein's network. You're not going to want to miss it. The deposition is public record. The transcript is in the congressional record. The FBI files have been partially released, but most of America hasn't read a single page. That's why we're here. Share this video with someone who needs to see it, not because it proves guilt. It doesn't. Not because it resolves anything. It doesn't. But because in a democracy, the public record belongs to the public. And accountability doesn't happen in silence. The next video, what the DOJ memo said about the people around Epstein and why some of them have never been charged. Subscribed. Stay close, because this story is far from over. Subscribe button. Watch next video.